Well, welcome to City Hall. I appreciate you all being here. If you don't know, I'm Andy Shore. I'm the new mayor. But thank you for joining us this afternoon. This is a really important subject. You know, culturally, historically, this is a very important subject. So as you all probably know, the City of Lansing and the Historical Society of Greater Lansing have been awarded $39,400. I'm not allowed to say $40,000, so $39,400 from a grant from the National Park Service. And the grant is towards telling the story of one of the transformative parts of Lansing's very rich history. And that's the building of I-496. I'll give you a little bit of it, and then I think Bill's going to give a little bit of it, and then Adolph. But we know, many here know that in 1963, the construction to begin the 496 trunk line began. The path of I-496 ran right through a mostly African-American neighborhood, causing mass displacement of many of the African-Americans here in Lansing. They're forced to leave their homes and move into other neighborhoods throughout the city. This uprooting, of course, it adversely affected black-owned businesses, community cohesiveness, and it was a big deal. It also led to a lot of issues and ill will for many in the African-American community who thought that the displacement was racially motivated. The 496 displacement was all happening during the height of the civil rights movement, and actually inspired the emergence of a new generation of African-American leadership and activism that ultimately changed Lansing for the better. The City of Lansing, with this grant, will work with the Historical Society, the African-American community, and our new advisory committee, our new Diversity and Inclusion Advisory Committee, to use the grant funding to launch what we're calling Paving the Way, which is going to be a research and documentation project. This grant allows us to publicize the stories of local activism during a time when black and white residents work together to overcome injustice and to bring on positive change. I want to thank the National Park Service for awarding us the grant to make Paving the Way possible and allow us to truly preserve an important piece of our past. I also want to thank our partners at the Historical Society for all of your hard work up to this point moving forward. I want to introduce Bill Castanier, who's the president of the Historical Society of Greater Lansing, who will talk more about the project and what it entails.
I'd like to welcome everyone again today. Thank you very much. This is something that the Historical Society has been working on quietly for several years. We think it's an important part of history that's been almost lost to time, and it significantly changed the cities in a lot of ways, some good, some bad. The traffic in 1964 in Lansing had reached incredible tipping point. There was traffic problems, there was a lot of congestions. Expressways were thought to be the future. They really started in the Eisenhower era with the idea that if there was ever a nuclear attack, people would be able to get out of the cities easily. That sounds to me like they didn't really understand nuclear bombs at that time as well as we do now, but that's when they started. It was also meant to alleviate congestion, as I mentioned, and it would help beautify cities by reducing slums. The Lansing Expressway, although it began in the early 60s, it was officially announced in 1964. It meant $26 million in construction cost that would be spent in the area, and $15.6 million in acquisition cost. It was amazingly, it had very little publicity at the beginning of it. The reason that communities across the country, and in Michigan you would have had Muskegon, Flint, Grand Rapids, Saginaw, and of course Detroit bought into this. The cost of the expressways, 90% was covered by the Federal Highway Administration. The Lansing Expressway would change the city forever. It was an 8.9-mile long trench. It started near Frandor, and it went to the city's border on the western side, which is around Clare Street. It really changed how we get around. Before, we used to be able to go easily east to west. Well, the expressway closed 35 streets in Lansing. At the time, they were called minor streets. They were only minor unless you lived on them, because your neighbors no longer could walk across, down the block to meet with you. They had to go a mile and a half around. There were numerous one-ways created, both for on and off exit ramps that we still have today. So when you're yelping about the number of one-ways we have, most of them are due to the expressway. There were 7 new bridges built, massive bridges. Those are the overpasses that we consider now. The expressway also required massive destruction of homes and businesses. And if you have a time later, there's some photographs of some of the homes and businesses that were destroyed. There's also a small portion, a 5-block portion. You can see what it looked like before and after from the air. Nearly 850 businesses and homes were acquired and torn down, but the majority of them were in the St. Joe Main Street corridor. More than 600 African-American families were forcibly moved from their homes, and again, in that area primarily. Moving options were limited at that time. This was before open housing, and most moving options were nearby West Side or the South Side. The homes were torn down beginning in 1965, and when people began moving, for which they were paid $50, I believe, for moving expenses, white flight accelerated in the West Side neighborhood especially. The first segment of the highway opened in December 1, 1968, and that was from Waverly to Clare. Miss Michigan Highway, and I think there's a photo of her over there, cut the official ribbon for the overall opening in December 1 of 1970. This was a very efficient process building this expressway once the homes were down. It was officially named the R.E. Olds Expressway. It was initially named to be named Ralph E. Kriego Expressway after a former mayor, but people thought no one would know who that is. The north-south crosstown on the east side became Clemens. It was originally thought almost up to the very end to be Shepherd Street, but it ultimately became Clemens through a lot of small P political. This was the first expressway to use grass berms. If you're familiar with expressways in the Detroit area, most of them were the big concrete walls. This had berms. It's also, we don't notice it as much now, but from Grand west, it is 20 feet under grade. And one of the first questions people ask is, where'd all the dirt go? It went east where it was very swampy toward East Lansing. So they just moved the dirt that direction. One of the important things is the construction of the expressway in Lansing was really thought to be the first organized resistance to fight the right-of-way acquisition. A lawsuit was filed with the Michigan Civil Rights Commission. And ultimately, they sided with the Highway Department and said there was no discrimination. And that's where the $50 moving expense came from, is they agreed to grant everyone a $50 moving expense. The long-term impact of it include some of the obvious things, but also it helped create a very vibrant Delta Township and Meridian Township. The expressways were thought initially that it would bring people into the city. What the planners didn't recognize is it also was able to take them out very efficiently. Also, the city of Lansing, by default, became more integrated. As an example, on the west side, a woman named Ann Crone formed the West Side Neighborhood Association to specifically fight discrimination and redlining. The outcomes that we want to do with this project are several. The first, we want to tell the history, and it's not we want to tell the history. We want the community to tell the history of the vibrant African American community that was there, and we want to especially use original voices. We're going to create a virtual online neighborhood. We'll recreate the actual neighborhood as it existed on a website. You'll be able to go in and either look at an address or look at a photograph of the house and click on it and find out who lived there. And then you'll be able to click again and find out where they moved. This won't be 100%, but we're able to do this because of the Capital Area District Library has a very important collection called the Stebbins Collection, which is photographs of almost every house in Lansing. Without that, this project would not be as easily, it's not going to be easy, but it would not be, we couldn't have done it. We're also going to record audio and video oral histories, and that has already begun, and we'll talk just briefly about it in a minute. We're collecting also photographs and ephemera, and the way we'll do that is at churches, African-American churches will hold collection days where we'll ask people to bring photographs in to scan and other ephemera they may have about life in Lansing. We want to really create a scrapbook of early life in Lansing for African-Americans. And early, I mean from the 20s to the 60s. That will also then be made into an exhibit that will be mounted at the Library of Michigan. It'll probably be there for 3 months, and then it'll be movable. We'll move it to other locations. It could be the lobby of City Hall, it could be local businesses, it could be, and we hope it will be schools, so other people get to see that. And then finally, we're working to create a documentary film on this entire project that'll be about 23 minutes in length and will enable others who haven't seen the story to see it. We're really one of the first communities to undertake a project like this. There's been some things, but not as in scope that we've done. Few communities have collected maybe 10, 20 oral interview or oral histories, but that's about as far as they've taken it. But we think with an interactive website, we'll be able to tell the story that'll be there forever. Really, again, the partners in this are the City of Lansing, which we couldn't do it without them, and Marilyn Plummer has been incredible to work with, the Library of Michigan, our Historical Society, the Capital Area District Library, the Archives of Michigan, and most important, the partner of this is going to be the people of Lansing to tell this story. And now I'd like to introduce you to somebody that I met through Derek Quinney. And Derek introduced me to Adolph Burton and Ken Turner, who had informally been working on documenting the history of the I-496 neighborhoods on their own for almost a year. And when I met them, we talked, and they began doing video interviews of some of the individuals that had lived in those neighborhoods and were moved out, and hearing their stories, their personal stories, and the impact. And I just want Adolph in particular today, because we really want to get this project, the conference done very shortly. But Adolph lived in that neighborhood and has got some interesting stories about growing up and what happened to his family. And it's just one example. There's going to be 800 of these examples of what happened to people in that community. Adolph?
Okay, I'll be 5 minutes.
Oh, you're fine.
My name is Adolph Burton, and I was a lifelong resident of Lansing. I was born on Olds Avenue in 1951. Olds Avenue, at that time, it was Logan Street. And my parents moved to Logan and St. Joseph Street in about 1963 or 64. And I went to Lincoln School. A lot of guys went to Main Street School or Verlinden or to Kalamazoo Street School or Michigan Avenue School. I went to Lincoln. And we moved from Lincoln from the south side of St. Joe to the north side of St. Joe in 63. And rather than move on to the south side to Churchill Downs on Jerry Street, we purchased a lot, dug a hole, and purchased one of the homes that was getting torn down and moved it across the street, as opposed to going on the south side. So my sister currently still lives in that house yet today. So I ended up going to West Junior, went there for 3 years, then went to Sexton, graduated from Sexton, and went to Grand Rapids Junior College, came back, went to Lansing Community College, and worked for the Department of Transportation. And I work for the City of Lansing as well, but my tenure here has always been pretty much here in Lansing. And how I got involved with Bill, as he said, was with Derek Quinney, because my dad, Frederick Richardson, was a photographer. He took lots of pictures back in the day. He took pictures of weddings, he took pictures of the Jabberwock, he took pictures of the cotillion, a lot of weddings, iconic events here in Lansing, and he passed away 2 years ago. So I went down to the basement and began rambling around, and I found some pictures. And I thought to myself, I know some of these pictures of people because so-and-so's father is my friend. Like Mr. Riddle, his boy is a friend of mine, Ralph Riddle. So I didn't know what to do with the pictures. So rather than give them to the people who they belong to, I thought I would try to do something with them. So Derek Quinn introduced me to Bill. Bill introduced himself to me, and then we're going to do this project. So a lot of the pictures contain people who lived in those areas. Dr. Harrison, Dr. Kennedy, Dunnings, and a lot of other people, Bill Letts. And so those pictures are very valuable because a lot of the pictures are from when they were at a very, very young age themselves and very big people in the community. So right now what we're doing is doing interviews with people who are either still alive from that era or relatives or kinfolk to those people and doing documentations to go along with this program. So it's been very, very interesting, paving the way. And I think that it's going to be very iconic event once we get it on film. So thank you very much.
Well, we invite everybody to take a look at the wonderful pictures that the Historical Society has put together, and he's probably going to be the most popular guy in the room, so feel free to grab one-on-ones and grab any of us. But thank you all for coming today. We're excited to see the future of this project. It's very important to remember our history in Lansing, especially this. So let's go do that. Thanks everyone for coming.